I tried to test it, but it sounded a little iffy, so I'm really sorry if it's weird. I'll get a new one when I can. Okay. Anyway, back to the bedtime story. This is more of the history of love. This is going to be part 19. Can you believe I've kept my place in this book with this tiny, tiny, tiny piece of paper? Number 6. If I had a Russian accent, everything would be different. When I got back to New York, Misha's first letter was waiting. Dear Alma, it began. Greetings. I am very happy for your welcome. He was almost 13, 5 months older than I. His English was better than Tatiana's because he'd memorized the lyrics of almost all the Beatles songs. He sang them while accompanying himself on the accordion his grandfather gave him, the one who'd moved in after Misha's grandmother died, and, according to Misha, her soul descended on the Summers Gardens in St. Petersburg in the form of a flock of geese. It stayed for 2 weeks straight, honking in the rain, and when it left, the grass was covered with turds. His grandfather arrived a few weeks later, dragging behind him a battered suitcase filled with the 18 volumes of The History of the Jews. I gotta go turn my dang grandma's phone off. No, I'll just hope it doesn't go off more. He moved into the already cramped room Misha shared with his older sister, Svetlana, took out his accordion and began to produce his life's work. At first, he just wrote variations on Russian folk songs mixed with Jewish riffs. Later, he moved on to darker, wilder versions, and at the very end, he stopped playing things they recognized altogether, and as he held the long notes, he wept, and no one needed to tell Misha and Svetya, even thick-headed as they were, that at last he'd become the composer he'd always wanted to be. He had a beat-up car that sat in the alley behind their apartment. The way Misha tells it, he drove like a blind man, giving the car almost full independence to feel its way along, bumping off things, only giving the wheel a spin with the tips of his fingers when the situation verged on life-threatening. When their grandfather came to pick them up from school, Misha and Svetlana would shield their ears and try to look away. When he revved the motor and became impossible to ignore, they'd hurry toward the car with their heads down and slide into the back seat. They'd huddle together in the back while their grandfather sat at the wheel, humming along to a tape of their cousin Lev's punk band. Pussy ass motherfucker. But he always got the words wrong. 4. Got into a fight, smashed his face on the car door. He might sing, You are my knight and wear shining armor. And 4. You're a louse, but you're so pretty. He'd sing, Take it up to the house in a jitney. When Misha and his sister pointed out his mistakes, their grandfather acted surprised and turned up the volume to hear better, but the next time around he'd sing the same thing. When he died, he left Svetya the 18 volumes of the history of the Jews, and Misha the accordion. Around the same time, Lev's sister, who wore blue eyeshadow, invited Misha into her room, played him Let It Be, and taught him how to kiss. Number 7. The Boy with the Accordion. Misha and I wrote 21 letters back and forth. This was the year I was 12, 2 years before Jacob Marcus wrote to my mother asking her to translate the history of love. Misha's letters were filled with exclamation points and questions like, What does mean your ass is grassy? And mine were filled with questions about life in Russia. Then he invited me to his bar mitzvah party. My mother braided my hair, lent me her red shawl, and drove me to his apartment house in Brighton Beach. I rang the buzzer and waited for Misha to come down. My mother waved to me from the car. I shivered in the cold. A tall boy with dark fuzz on his upper lip came out. Alma, he asked. I nodded. Welcome, my friend. envelopes in his pocket, so I spent most of the party sitting in the corner of the couch with a plate of giant shrimp. I don't even eat shrimp, but it's the only thing I recognized. If anyone talked to me, I had to explain that I didn't speak Russian. An old man offered me some vodka. Just then, Misha rushed out of the kitchen strapped into his accordion, which was plugged into an amplifier, and broke into song. "You say it's your birthday," he shouted. The crowd looked nervous. "Well, it's my birthday too," he yelled, and the accordion shrieked to life. This led into Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which led into Here Comes the Sun, and eventually, after 5 or 6 songs, the Beatles broke into Hava Nagia, and the crowd went wild, everyone singing along and trying to dance. When the music finally stopped, Misha came to find me, his face pink and sweaty. He grabbed my hand and I followed him out of the apartment, down the hall, up 5 flights of stairs, through a door, and out onto the roof. You could see the ocean in the distance, the lights of Coney Island, and after that, an abandoned roller coaster. My teeth started to chatter, and Misha took off his jacket and put it around my shoulders. It was warm and smelled of sweat. Number 8. This is a Russian word that I do not know. Me. Hi, this is Raven speaking. I don't know this word. It looks like barab, but it's in Russian letters, so I don't know. I told Misha everything about how my father had died and my mother's loneliness and Bert's unshakable belief in God. I told him about the 3 volumes of How to Survive in the Wild, and the English editor and his regatta, and Henry Lavender and his Philippine shells, and the vegetarian Tucci. I told him about Dr. Elridge and Life as We Don't Know It, and later, 2 years after we started to write to each other, 7 years after my dad died, and 3.9 billion years after the first life on Earth, when Jacob Marcus's first letter arrived from Venice, I told Misha about the history of love. Mostly we wrote or talked on the phone, but sometimes on the weekends we get to see each other. I liked going to Brighton Beach better because Mrs. Schlovsky would bring us tea with sweet cherries in china cups. And Mr. Schlovsky, whose armpits always had dark circles of sweat, taught me how to curse in Russian. Sometimes we'd rent movies, especially spy stories or thrillers. Our favorites were Rear Window, Strangers on a Train, and North by Northwest, which we'd watched 10 times. When I wrote to Jacob Marcus, pretended to be my mother, it was Misha I told about it, reading the final draft to him over the phone. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think your ass is. Forget it," I said. Number 9. The Man Who Searched for a Stone. A week went by after I sent my letter, or my mother's letter, or whatever you want to call it. Another week went by, and I wondered if maybe Jacob Marcus was out of the country, possibly Cairo, or maybe Tokyo. A week went by, and I thought maybe he'd somehow figured out the truth. 4 days went by, and I studied my mother's face for signs of anger. It was already the end of July. A day went by, and I thought maybe I should write to Jacob Marcus and apologize. The next day, his letter came. My mother's name, Charlotte Singer, was written across the front in fountain pen. I slipped it into the waist of my shorts just as the telephone rang. "Hello," I said impatiently. "Is the Messiah home?" said the voice on the other end. "Who?" "The Messiah," the kid said, and I heard muffled laughter in the background. It sounded a little like Louis, who lived 1 block over and used to be Bert's friend until he met other friends he liked better and stopped talking to Bert. "Leave him alone," I said, and hung up, wishing I'd thought of something better. I ran up the block to the park, holding my side so the envelope wouldn't slip. It was hot out, and I was already sweating. I tore the letter open next to a trash can in Long Meadow. The first page was about how much Jacob Marcus liked the chapters my mother had sent. I skimmed it until, on the second page, I got to the sentence that read, "I still haven't mentioned your letter." He wrote, "I'm flattered by your curiosity. I wish I had more interesting answers to all your questions. I have to say, these days I spend a lot of time just sitting here and looking out the window. I used to love to travel, but the trip to Venice was harder than I thought, and I doubt I'll do it again. developed certain requirements. It had to fit comfortably in the palm, be smooth, preferably gray, etc. So that was my morning. I've spent the last few hours recovering. It wasn't always like this. It used to be that a day was worthless to me if I hadn't produced a certain amount of work. That I noticed or didn't notice the gardener's limp, the ice on the lake, the long, solemn outings of my neighbor's child who appears to have no friends. These things were beside the point, but that's changed now. You asked me if I was married. I was once, but that was a long time ago, and we were clever or stupid enough not to have a child. Before I read this next part, for some reason I have it underlined, which means way back when I got this book, I underlined it, which means, I don't know, it meant something to me. We met each other when we were young, before we knew enough about disappointment, and once we did, we found we reminded each other of it. I guess you could say, that was all I had underlined, by the way. I guess you could say that I wear a little Russian astronaut on my lapel, too. I live alone now, which doesn't bother me, or maybe just a little, but it would take an unusual woman to want to keep me company now that I can hardly walk down to the bottom of the driveway and back to pick up the mail. I still do it, though. Twice a week, a friend brings by some groceries, and my neighbor looks in once a day with the excuse of wanting to check on the strawberries she planted in my garden. I don't even like strawberries. I'm making it sound worse than it is. I don't even know you yet, and I'm already fishing for sympathy. You also asked what I do. I read. This morning I finished The Street of Crocodiles for the third time. I found it almost unbearably beautiful. Also, I watch movies. My brother got me a DVD player. You wouldn't believe how many movies I've watched in the last month. That's what I do. Watch movies and read. Sometimes I even pretend to write, but I'm not fooling anyone. Oh, and I go to the mailbox. Enough. I loved your book. Please send me some more. J.M. Number 10. I read the letter 100 times, and each time I read it, I felt I knew a little less about Jacob Marcus. He said he spent the morning looking for a rock, but he never said anything more about why the history of love was so important to him. Of course, it didn't escape me that he'd written, I don't even know you yet. Yet! Meaning he was expecting to get to know us better, or at least our mother, since he didn't know about Bert and me. Yet. But why? Why could he hardly walk to the mailbox and back? And why would it take an unusual woman to keep him company? And why was he wearing a Russian astronaut on his lapel? I decided to make a list of clues. I went home, closed my bedroom door, and took out the third volume of How to Survive in the Wild. I turned to a new page. I decided to write everything in code, in case anyone decided to snoop around my things. I remembered Saint X. At the top I wrote, How to survive if your parachute fails to open. Then I wrote, search for a stone, live near a lake, have a gardener with a limp, read The Street of Crocodiles, need an unusual woman, have trouble just walking to the mailbox. Those were all the clues I could come up with from his letter, so I snuck into my mother's study while she was downstairs and got his other letters out of her desk drawer. I read these for more clues. That's when I remembered that his first letter began with a quote from my mother's introduction about Nicanor Para, the one about how he wore a little Russian astronaut on his lapel and carried in his pockets the letters of a woman who left him for another. When Jacob Marcus wrote that he also wore a Russian astronaut, did it mean that his wife had left him for someone else? Because I wasn't sure. I didn't put this down as a clue. Instead, I wrote, take a trip to Venice. A long time ago, have someone read to you the history of love while you're falling asleep. Never forget it. I looked over my clues. None of them helped. Number 11. How I am. I decided that I really wanted to find out who Jacob Marcus was and why it was so important to him to have the book translated. The only place left to look was the history of love. I snuck upstairs to my mother's study to see if I could print the chapters she translated off her computer. The only problem realized that she was sitting in front of it. "Hello," she said. "Hello," I said, trying to sound casual. "How are you?" she said. "Fine, thank you. How are you?" I answered, because that's what she taught me to say, as well as how to hold my knife and fork properly, how to balance a teacup between two fingers, and the best way to take out a piece of food between my teeth without drawing attention to myself, on the off chance that the Queen happened to invite me for high tea. When I pointed out that no one I know holds their knife and fork properly, she looked unhappy and said she was trying to be a good mother, and if she didn't teach me, who would? I wish she hadn't, though, because sometimes being polite is worse than being not polite. Like the time Greg Feldman passed me in the hall at school and said, "Hey Alma, what's up?" And I said, "Fine, thank you, how are you?" And he stopped and gave me a look like I'd just parachuted down from Mars, and said, "Why can't you ever just say, 'not much'?" Number 12, not much. It got dark out, and my mother said there was nothing to eat in the house, and did we want to order some Thai food, or maybe West Indian, or how about Cambodian? "Why can't we cook?" I asked. "Macaroni and cheese," my mother asked. "Mrs. Slavsky makes a very good chicken la orange," I said. My mother looked doubtful. "Chili," I said. While she was at the supermarket, I went up to her study and printed out chapters 1 through 15 of the History of Love, which was as far as she'd gotten. I took the pages downstairs and hid them in my survival backpack under the bed. A few minutes later, my mother came home with 1 pound of ground turkey, 1 head of broccoli, 3 apples, a jar of pickles, and a box of marzipan imported from Spain. Number 13. The eternal disappointment of life as it is. After a dinner of microwaved fake meat chicken nuggets, I went to bed early and read what my mother had translated of The History of Love under the covers by flashlight. There was the chapter about how people used to talk with their hands, and the chapter about the man who thought he was made of glass, and a chapter I hadn't read called The Birth of Feeling. Feelings are not as old as time, it begins. So, for some reason, my younger self also put a star next to this. I'm really sensitive right now, so I'm gonna get emotional. I can already tell. Just as there was a first instant when someone rubbed 2 sticks together to make a spark, there was a first time joy was felt, and a first time for sadness. For a while, new feelings were being invented all the time. Desire was born early, as was regret. When stubbornness was felt for the first time, it started a chain reaction, creating the feeling of resentment on the one hand, and alienation and loneliness on the other. It might have been a certain counterclockwise movement of the hips that marked the birth of ecstasy, a bolt of lightning that caused the first feeling of awe, or maybe it was the body of a girl named Alma. Contrary to logic, the feeling of surprise wasn't born immediately. It only came after people had enough time to get used to things as they were. And when enough time had passed, and someone felt the first feelings of surprise, someone, somewhere else, felt the first pang of nostalgia. It's also true that sometimes people felt things and, because there was no word for them, they were unmentioned. The oldest emotion in the world may be that of being moved, but to describe it, just to name it, must have been like trying to catch something invisible. Then again, the oldest feeling in the world might simply have been confusion. Having begun to feel, people's desire to feel grew. They wanted to feel more, feel deeper, despite how much it sometimes hurt. People became addicted to feeling. They struggled to uncover new emotions. It's possible that this is how art was born. New kinds of joy were forged, along with new kinds of sadness. The eternal disappointment of life as it is, the relief of unexpected reprieve, the fear of dying. Even now, all possible feelings do not yet exist. There are still those that lie beyond our capacity and our imagination. From time to time, when a piece of music no one has ever written, or a painting no one has ever painted, or something else impossible to predict, fathom, or yet describe takes place, a new feeling enters the world, and then, for the millionth time in the history of feeling, the heart surges and absorbs the impact. All of the chapters were sort of like this, and none of them really told me anything about why the book was so important to Jacob Marcus. Instead, I found myself thinking about my father, about how much the history of love must have meant to him if he gave it to my mother only 2 weeks after they met, even though he knew she couldn't read Spanish yet. Why? Because he was falling in love with her, of course. Then I thought of something else. What if my father had written something inside the copy of the history of love he gave to my mother? It had never occurred to me to look. I got out of bed and went upstairs. Mom's study was empty and the book was next to her computer. I lifted it up and opened to the title page. In handwriting I didn't recognize, it said, "For Charlotte, my Alma. This is the book I would have written for you if I could write. Love, David." I went back to bed and thought about my father and those 20 words for a long time. And then I started to think about her, Alma. Who was she? My mother would say she was everyone. Every girl and every woman that anyone ever loved. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought that she also must have been someone. Because how could Litvinov have written so much about love without being in love himself with someone in particular? And that someone must have been named. Under the 9 clues I've already written, I added one more. Alma. I'm having a really hard time reading this, but I'm gonna try to finish for you guys because there's just a little bit left to this chapter. Number 14, the birth of feeling. I raced down to the kitchen, but it was empty. Outside the window, in the middle of our backyard, overgrown and full of weeds, was my mother. I pushed open the screen door. "Alma," I said, catching my breath. My mother said. She was holding a gardening trowel. I didn't have time to stop and think about why she was holding a gardening trowel, since it was my father who gardened, not her. And since it was already 9:30 at night. What was her last name? I asked. "What are you talking about?" my mother said. "Alma," I said impatiently. "The girl in the book. What's her last name?" My mother wiped her forehead, leaving a smear of dirt. Actually, now that you mention it, one of the chapters does mention a surname, but it's strange, because while all the other names in the book are Spanish, her surname is... My mother frowned. "What?" I said. "Maraminsky," my mother said, excited. "Maraminsky," I repeated. She nodded. "Maraminsky. Polish. It's one of the few clues Litvinov left about where he came from." I ran back upstairs, climbed into bed, turned on my flashlight, and opened the 3rd volume of How to Survive in the Wild. Next to Alma, I wrote, Maraminsky. The next day, I started to look for her. I can tell this is where the book starts to get good because nowhere have I marked the book except for here. That part that I starred. And it looks like the chapter coming up. I also put a star right next to it too, so you can also tell this is where I was really into the book because I wasn't even using a bookmark. I was just folding down the page edges, which sucks because this is such a great book, but it's my book, damn it. I can fold the edges if I want. I'm gonna stop there for today. This might be a little bit longer of a video than normal, but I hope you enjoyed that. I'm having a little bit of love trouble, and I'm really struggling. But this is the first person that I know is worth anything. It's just really hard right now. Love is hard sometimes. But true love is stronger than literally anything. And deep down I know that. So I may be really struggling through this, but I'm trying so hard. And I may have cried most of the day yesterday, but today I'm doing a lot better, so perhaps I just need to force myself to be around family more, and that will help during this difficult time. But if you are watching this, you know how I feel about you. I can't wait to see you again. hold your face between my hands. I'm getting really sweaty now. Okay. Make sure to give this video a like if you did enjoy it, and if you made it this far. That way I can tell who made it this far. Also, subscribe to my channel if you want to see when I come out with more of these, and hit the notification bell and hit all notifications so that you get notified if you do really like this series. Not even halfway through the dang book yet, you guys. I'm verging on halfway through. But yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting me if you do. Maybe share this series with people that you know like ASMR. That would mean so much to me. I will also have a playlist linked in the pinned comment below that has all of these videos in order, because obviously there's 19 now. So yeah, this shirt looks so big on me. Holy crap. There we go. That's crazy. Okay. But yeah, if you do like ASMR, you can go watch that whole playlist. I do it sometimes. This is such a wonderful book. And by the way, it's just getting really good